Give everyone a couple minutes and then we'll get kicked off here. I love it.
Happy Halloween!
That is awesome.
I know I don't normally look like this, so just in case you were wondering. I'm just gonna turn my camera off since you know you're recording, so just
Completely
I
fine.
love it, but I
You're looking
absolutely
great though.
thanks.
We know if the full team is joining. Is this the majority of everyone we need for this particular action type?
probably still have a couple that are maybe just give it like 2 more minutes, see who
Yeah,
else is going to be hopping on.
absolutely. And you might have noticed I updated the invite um, from just like 1 to 2 to 1 to 3.
Yeah.
So the first part, we're going to talk work orders and kind of dig into that action type. And then second half, we were planning on going over assessments. That one might be a little bit shorter. We might only go through that roughly taking 30 minutes or so, just because we don't have the GL accounts in Vantaca yet. There's not a ton that we can do as far as actually setting them up. But I do still want to just review like how that process would work, at least in Presidential Valley. So once we get those GLs in, then you guys can kind of hit the ground running with that. But it just to forewarn the team, it might not take that whole time. And then part two of that, like if not everyone needs to be involved with the assessment piece, you can jump off after we talk about work orders, and then we can really target just the specific groups if necessary.
I know for the assessments, we said that we definitely want Ray on that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I'm gonna
which
just review
you
like the
want
GL
to
accounts with him to make sure he doesn't have any questions getting that data over. But yeah, we'll give it another minute or two, and then we'll jump into work orders to start.
Work orders is actually funny. The one thing I really remember a lot of from when I did Vantica a couple of years
Oh,
ago.
yeah,
They had a
it's a pretty seamless process in Vanica. A lot of the steps are generally already built out, and it's just a matter of kind of tweaking it to configure to your guys' process. But
we used it a lot because I had an in-house big maintenance team and irrigation tech team, and it worked well.
awesome, love to hear it. All right, let's see here. So we got about 5 right now. Anyone in particular that we should wait on?
I think we're okay. I know Christy said Corey's coming, but I know the work orders are probably going to be used more and trained by the directors. Will be training the cams.
Yeah, agreed.
So I
Awesome.
think you can probably get started.
Cool. All right. Can you guys see my Vanica.net screen?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, so what we're going to do first is just kick one off from the homeowner portal perspective. So I'm going to mimic an account, kind of show how that would get submitted into Vanica through the portal, and then we'll step through the action item, talk about the configuration, and then make some changes as we need to. But first thing I'm going to do is just go to the login page and mimic one of these accounts. You do a different one. Just one login here. Okay, cool. So mimicking Rutherford, if we go to this request tab, this is where I have that option to submit this request from the homeowner portal. So I go to request, it pulls up a couple different options, general, ARC, reservation, so more like the amenity side of things. But if I click into general, it's going to drop down some of the general type of requests, one of which is billing question, fee waiver, service request here, and then general question. So this is just a snippet of those different options that you have from the general request button. And then if we scroll down here to the choose a type, that's where we would select that service request. Subject, I'm just going to say new service request, and we'll talk about the naming conventions, things like that, once we go back to the configuration piece. But if you guys call it work order compared to service request, we can update that in a second. But just entering my subject here, and then I'm going to say need this work to be done. And then if I have any attachments here, I can click this select files, pull in any documentation, images, whatever sort of attachments might be helpful to attach to this request, and then submit form here. It's the last step from that owner perspective. And you'll see this pop-up message automatically. So your request was successfully sent. Now, if I'm looking at my items, again, I'm still on that same owner account, just mimicking someone in Presidential Valley, but you can see there's a couple violations on this account. And then that new service request that we just submitted is now going to be one of my new items that I submitted. We go to the Vantaca.net side. So this is that same account, but now we're in Vantaca.net. And if I just go to Rutherford's action items, quick and shortcut way to get there is clicking this NA under collection status. That's going to take me, right now I'm on the login page for that particular account. But if you click in there, now you can see we're on action items for that same account. So all these at the top are shortcuts and hyperlinks to different screens, but whatever's under collection status, whether that's NA or with attorney, first notice, etc., that's always going to take you to their action items page. And then if I look at the most recent XN, I can just double click in here to get a down arrow. That's the same as sorting ascending or descending. Click again, that filter is gone. And now it's back to my most recent XN on this particular account, which is this 10943 called service request. And it's going to start in that review request step. So if we drill into this XN that was kicked off from the portal, you'll see request received. It doesn't look like the notifications are on, but what this step is designed for is just to send them essentially like that courtesy notice. Hey, we received your request. And then it auto rolls to the manager in this example to actually review that incoming request. Questions so far? Awesome. Looking at this step, like I said, it doesn't look like that email attachment or that email notification is turned on. Is that something that you guys would want to notify the owner of? Just once that is received, a automated message saying, hey, we received your request?
Yeah, right now we're using it for when the request has been submitted, and then usually when it's with the board or incomplete, we try not to do like your documents have been uploaded or anything. Just try to, the board's made a decision, it's incomplete or it's been received completed.
Perfect. Awesome. So I'll turn that on. So I'm just going now to settings, action type steps. Again,
Oh, and then of course, approved and denied. I'm so sorry.
Okay, like from the board perspective.
Yes, yes.
Got it. Do you guys call it service request or is it called work order within your company?
Or architectural? No.
No, work
Wait.
orders.
Oh, work orders. Yeah, it's service requests. It's service requests.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll leave that as is for the action type. And then this is that step I was talking about. So request received, send to homeowner. Right now, if we look at the rules in this, it's set to no notifications, but we'll flip this to email. And if we click hamburger menu email, that's where the templated email message lives. And you'll see this is what will now be sent just once that is initially received. So dear owner, courtesy notice to inform you we received your request as of today's date. Information here, that's going to be like what they input from within the portal. So that'll automatically pull in. Awesome. And then just basically letting them know that we're, working on that. Here's your XN number specific to that, link to the web portal. And yeah, just that courtesy notice. Now that will go out. So if we go back to the workflow, You can see here there is no email, but if we submit another one from the portal as a test, you'll have like an email button here that you can click in and actually see that go out. When we submitted it, it was set to no notifications. That's why it's not here. But moving forward, that'll notify the owner, and then it'll still auto roll to this review request step. Is the manager the one that is typically reviewing those for you guys?
Yes.
Awesome. So that's where we're at now. Step 10, review requests being sent to the manager. And then from there, it's just a matter of, kind of what we are doing to process that next. So you can see a couple different options: send to provider. If we step it to this step 20, send to provider, let me zoom in a little bit too. So if we step here to send to provider, that's actually going to notify and send to that service provider. And then it rolls to provider assigned to, again, kind of notify that owner that we've assigned a provider. And then it's going to auto roll one more time to this pending completion step. You'll see no one is in the send to for this step. It's really just a status at this point. We've sent it to the provider. We've notified the owner. Now we're just waiting on that work to be done. So it's pending completion at this point. But we'll go through those here.
Matt, sorry to interrupt you.
You're
For
good.
the email template back on the prior page where you're editing the logic, are those set globally? Like, do we have a general global that applies and then they can be customized on a client level, or do we have to customize them for each client?
So this is a global page. So whatever change we're doing here, this is taking place across all associations essentially.
Gotcha.
This settings, action types, and steps page is predominantly global. So like majority of action types are global action types. There are a couple where we have the ability to set like association specific workflows or action types. But that's going to be limited to, if I duplicate and go to association settings, like in the association settings, we can say, hey, for Presidential Valley, and then down here, ARC is one. So if right now there's only this one ARC request model, if I were to click edit and try and choose one, again, there's only one right now. But if that workflow was different per association, we could have ARC request dash Presidential Valley, ARC request dash different association. So that's one that we have that ability for. CCR, same thing, the violations model. And then lastly, collections. Outside of those three, they're really the rest of them are global workflows for the most part.
Perfect. And are we able to change where the emails are being sent from? Because right now, one of the, I guess, challenges we have is the emails are coming from maintenance@caliber.software.com, and most people aren't checking for it or realizing it, and there's nothing I can change off of the domain.
Yeah, so do we have let me go to mailroom, print
We've
queue.
touched or edited the DNS at all for you guys yet? I was just curious.
So whatever we set up as the email address in here, that's essentially where it would go out of from a Vantaca perspective. So say this is like info@omega.com, like that is the email address that controls that.
Perfect. So I could have it come from customer service at artemislifestyles.com if we wanted to.
Yeah.
Awesome. That'll help a lot more with transparency and people getting notices and realizing what they're looking at. So awesome. Thank you, Matt.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Going back to settings, action type, steps. All right. So if I come down here, again, we have the option to send to provider, which is going to notify the provider. When we're talking about this step two, it's just important to point out the email addresses. So if we have the email address for that provider in Vantaca, that's where you're going to get the most benefit out of working this work order fully through the system. So just be mindful of that when we're migrating over service providers from your current system. As many email addresses that we can get, just the more benefit you're going to get out of, working these action types through Vantaca or sending things specifically to providers.
Hey, Matt, with these, again, this is going to be a global service provider list. Is that
It
correct?
is, yeah.
So let's just use an example of like a landscape company. We might have the same landscape company, Brightview, over all, territories, but 20 different account managers. So we would want to add those individual emails for that specific account manager, so they'd be available in like a drop down, right?
Yeah, exactly. It would just be like an additional contact for that landscaping provider. So you'd have the landscaping provider, and then you'd have those 20 different contacts with those different emails. So as an example, if I duplicate, go to service provider list, I think we have one in here. Testy Testerson. If I select this account, this is their invoices page. But if I go to contact for Testy, you see how I have Tim
You can add
here.
in, yeah, that, okay.
Yeah.
That's, okay.
And then go ahead.
Sorry, Matt, then how does it select the right email in the?
You would basically choose it from the drop down. So I'll show you here when we go to step this one. Yeah, there's going to be a drop down where you can choose that contact. There's also a benefit. So going back to your original question, Michelle, yes, service providers in Vantaca are global, but there are some things that you can do to create essentially association specific providers through association services. So here I can say my collection attorney as the service provider or service, for example, in Presidential Valley is always this Buster Brown contact. So this section is more association specific providers, but the list as a whole is global.
Okay, so we start with the global list and then we can drill down to community specific if we need to.
Yeah, and we'll talk about like the benefit of these. The big piece for services is the management fee and like automating how we get paid in a timely manner. But there's other things that we can do to essentially identify like association specific providers. But here, so when we go to review requests, and now let's say I'm going to send this to the provider, I'll show you where that drop down comes in. But if we go to step, so if I'm clicking hamburger menu and I go to step this action item, again, now I'm the manager, I'm reviewing this request. And in this next step, 20, send to provider. This is what I was talking about with the service. So if I have services set up, it's going to automatically choose that provider for me that's on that association service page. If I don't have these services, I could still just in my service provider dropdown, clear that out, type in Testy. So I'm choosing Testy Testerson as the provider, but you'll see in this contact, that's where Tim versus Taylor comes into it.
And we could probably add key indicators, put like Tim and then put like Terra Nova, put Jim, whatever, so that it'd make it even easier for
exactly
we're sending it. Okay, cool.
Yep. Exactly. So I'm going to choose, we'll say Tim for this one. And let me back up there. So again, if I click hamburger menu, step, if I go with this first option, so this is where I would have, or I could have my landscaping set up as a service, and then I could choose, we'll pretend collection attorney is landscape. But here it's essentially going to choose that provider for me, collect it all. And as we just saw on that other screen, in this particular community, collect it all, or my collection attorney is connected to that Buster Brown contact. So choosing my provider once more, my contact, Tim. If I want to add additional notes, I can do that here as well. And then say we're not necessarily ready to send this to provider, there's other options as well. So generally, like if we're reviewing it and we're sending it straight to provider, we would just go straight to 20, which it's going to notify the owner that it was assigned, roll to pending completion. But you also have some other options if you're not sending it directly to that provider initially. So here, send to provider for estimate, which then will roll to waiting for estimate. So we're just waiting for that estimate to come back to us. Not association responsibility. Maybe it's something that you guys, don't provide service for, and just notifying the owner that it is not the association's responsibility. So a couple different paths that you have just within that review step. But we'll send this one to provider. So again, hamburger menu step. I'm going to send to provider. I'm going to choose Testy Testerson and then identify my contact and then just update. So you'll see a couple things happen. Again, we were down here at this review. We sent it to provider. It's going to roll to provider assigned, notifying the owner, and then roll to pending completion step. Similar to that first review request step, it doesn't look like this notification is on to basically give that courtesy notice to the owner that a provider has been assigned. Is that something that we would want to turn on? Yeah, so right now it's set to no notifications, just like this first step. But if we do flip that to email, again, it's just another templated email to the owner saying, hey, a provider has been assigned for your service request with this XN number. It's this provider. And then this is, again, that original message that we input.
My concern with that as a CAM is that the owner might try to contact the provider directly.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can think of that could be.
And you could change like that message, like if we don't even want to include, so if we go back to that email template, like say you just want to say, hey, a provider has been assigned, you could keep it pretty generic and like pull this information out, or we can just leave it off.
Yeah.
But yeah, any of these email templates that we're looking at, we can customize, we can change up the rhetoric and things like that. So for right now, we'll leave it off, but just something to think about internally. And if we want to turn that on or change the message, we can circle back to that.
Hey, Matt, is this where if you had an on-site maintenance person, would this be where it would get assigned to them as well? Same thing?
Yeah, generally that's going to be within the same workflow. And maybe that's like us adding a couple different steps to identify, this one's sending to provider compared to this one's in-house.
Yeah, that would
But yeah, we could create that additional step, make it easy to identify, and then just change like the role that we're sending it to.
And even, on that is, we have like on-site maintenance, but we also have like in-house Artemis maintenance team with a generic email to assign certain things to the Artemis maintenance team that's not specific to an on-site. So we might need to look at a couple different steps where it's like, okay, outside service provider, on-site maintenance, or Artemis maintenance, where it's, goes to Neil or whoever to get their techs scheduled.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. So again, I'm now on the portal Mimic page here. So we're back to Rutherford's account, looking at my items, just to show, you can see we still have this service request action item open. It's now in that pending completion step though, which if we go here, we sent to provider has been assigned, and then it rolls to pending completion for us. From that pending completion step, you'll see right now it has this 1110 follow update. So once that follow update hits, it's going to roll to step 50, just to follow up, make sure the provider's still performing the work, or maybe update the owner, whatever you would want to do or need to do in that interim period. This is also something like, say I want this to come earlier, and I want to look at that the 5th, you can just update that follow update. Now it's going to roll to 50 follow up on the 5th compared to the 10th. But that is really coming from, if we look at that pending completion step, right now it's a set duration of 10 days. But again, that can be adjusted on a per action type basis, or we can adjust this if you would prefer it be 5, 15, etc.
Then Matt, what happens on the follow-up date hits?
It just rolls to that follow-up step back to the manager. And again, we're just maybe reaching out to the provider at this point, maybe notifying the owner that there was a delay, hopefully not that one, but really whatever we just want to make sure that work is still being completed, basically. The send to provider for estimate, again, you would use this one before just straight sending it to provider. At this point, we're assigning it and sending it to the provider to perform the work. Whereas this one, you could jump down if you wanted to get an estimate beforehand. So that would be more in that review request step. But this is just an option to send it to a provider for an estimate rather than assigning it to them. jumping back over here. So we're going to pretend like our follow-up has hit. From the follow-up date, the next step really is just to notify the owner of the status. So if after our follow-up date hits and we're notified from the provider that it is complete, step 70 is called service request complete, which if we go back to the workflow, that's where it's going to notify the owner that that work has been completed. We look at the rules on that one. That's going to auto roll. So there's a 0 here. That's just telling us that the next step is going to be complete. So the purpose of this one is to notify the owner, send them that communication saying, hey, service request complete. And then it's going to auto roll to 90, which is an actual closing step within the action item. But we want to step it here just to first notify the owner, and then the system will roll it to complete. So just to see that like in real time. Again, we're on pending completion. I'm just going to go straight to service request complete. I'm going to get rid of my follow-up date at this point. We're done with the work. And you'll see service request complete, and then that roll to the actual closing step, which is called complete. And then this email communication. I'm just refreshing right here. And you'll see this email pull in. We can click that to review it. Dear owner, service request for that XN has been completed. This was your original request. And now we're at the step of service request complete. Again, this message, completely customizable. If you want to add or remove any of that detail here. So hamburger menu, back on that email template for that designated step. So it's all on a per step basis. Really the ones that we want to be mindful of are the ones going external. So to service provider, to homeowner, you want to make sure those templates are in there and, fully approved by you guys. For the ones like manager, they're getting that in their my action items. So like that's not as important to have that email template communication in there or like set up because really I should be in my action items working that compared to these two. Those are actually going externally to either the provider or the owner. A couple other options, not association responsibility. That's just notifying the owner that that is not our responsibility. And then some review steps. So if we need the manager to review this, the board to review this, that would just be an additional step and option for sending that to the board. On hold. So maybe we want to keep this action item open. So the original request that came in, you don't want to close it out and move it to this complete step, which is a closing step, but you want to leave it open on hold. No one is in the send to there, so it's really just a hold status. It's not going to clog up my action items or be in anyone's my action items at this point. But now, say 30 days down the road, we're ready to continue working on it. We can just take this existing XN and, now send it to the provider or send it for estimate, whatever we would need to do after that hold period. Owner response, right now that's coming back into admin. Is that typically going to the manager or is that the admin assistant that should be receiving messages on this?
Manager, because there's not a lot of admins. There's maybe a couple on sites that might have admins that help with things like that, but most of the portfolios are going to be the CAMs will be handling it.
Got it. Yeah, and it looks like the manager is pretty much responsible the rest of the way too, so that makes sense.
Is the manager able to step it to an admin for on-sites to where we can make it where community specific? So if a manager gets something that the admin can really work on, are we able to assign that to an admin? But it not globally, but
I mean, anything we do here
association.
is going to be globally. So like if I put admin on the review request step, for example, it's always going to go to the admin regardless of association. So like whatever changes we're making here, that is a global change. We can add steps in here that are, only used in certain associations, but they would still be available for all of those other associations. Because again,
I think that would be fine because the manager's not going to step it to an admin if they don't have an admin. You know what I mean?
Right. So like what one thought I'm thinking is like right here we have manager review, which technically the manager is reviewing it up here when it initially comes in. We could change that review to admin review and then just change the role from manager to admin. And that way it comes in to review requests. If manager needs to step it to admin, they would just essentially push it to that admin review step.
Denise, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm thinking, I agree with you, Michelle. Maybe we can label it as on-site admin review.
Yeah,
So we don't have accidental,
yeah, that's true.
you know. So I think that would be great because we do have some that the admin would need to kind of owns the process of this for sure. On-site though.
Awesome. So updated the name of that step to on-site admin review and then changed the roles there. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, is it possible to set the manager and the admin as the same person in the system?
Yeah, you essentially could, yeah.
Okay, because then we could still leave it as admin, and then whenever they have one, the admin would be assigned, and then if they don't, it just goes to the manager by default as a potential workaround. Just a thought.
Is there, Michelle, is there any other scenarios like that you can think of? Or just anyone on the call too?
I mean, we talked about service, we talked about on-site maintenance. We talked about global maintenance as far as like in-house Artemis maintenance for service providers.
So those would be like two different paths though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's start with that first one. I'm going to call this 77 and it was on-site maintenance.
On-site maintenance. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to create the step first, then we'll come back to the send to,
That's
because
fine.
we have maintenance tech here, maintenance supervisor. I'm assuming it would be one of those.
Yes.
Okay, let's just go ahead and add preference. Would it be one, like the supervisor only?
I would just do supervisor because some communities might only have one maintenance person and others might have several, but they would probably go to the supervisor initially for them to decide what tech they want to have work it.
Got it. So on-site, is the name of that step, is that clear? Do we want to add detail?
I think that's pretty clear. I think on-site maintenance is pretty black and white for the cams.
Okay. And then we'll do 79. What was that second
We
one?
said
Is it Michelle? That's like the Artemis facilities.
or yeah, Artemis facilities, or I was gonna say Artemis maintenance.
Mhm.
Make
And
sure I
maybe
get my spelling right.
could you do Artemis maintenance and then depending on how much we have in the field, could we do parentheses facilities? Because it's kind of sometimes it's called facilities, sometimes it's called Artemis maintenance.
Facilities.
Yeah.
Like it's spelled out correctly. It's still...
Oh, ITIES. Yeah, there you go.
And is that one of the roles that we have here already, or would that be one that we either need to create or add as a default follower?
I think that would be maintenance supervisor.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Got it.
'Cause it
One's
would
just
be a
in-house,
different
one is
maintenance
just for
supervisor, yeah.
maintenance or for Artemis, excuse me.
Yeah.
Supervisor. Okay. I'm just going to refresh there. Come back in. And then now on that review request step, I'm just going to add those as options. So we can send to provider, go to board, we can go on-site maintenance, Artemis, on-site admin. And then you guys said there are some that you do send to board review for just like some sort of approval as well.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, let me go back here. So the one that we step through from service request complete, that's where we notify the owner, auto rolls to complete. If we look at this one, again, so I can go back to that owner's action items. You'll see there's the violation still open, that general inquiry, but the one we just worked is now closed out. If we click include closed here, it is still in the background for us. So maybe the owner replies on this. It's going to open up that same 10943. And then just to point out a couple additional options here. So whether we're at review request, whether we're at pending completion, at any point throughout this action item, there's always this plus new message feature. This is also available on all action items, so just keep that in mind as you're working. But this is a great tool for internal communication as well as external. But plus new message, if you want to send to the admin assistant, just add a message. It's going to keep it in that step of the action item, but it's going to send them a direct message. So you can choose who you're sending it to. You can also send these things to the owner. And that's at any point of the workflow, plus new message. It'll keep it in that step. So if we're at pending completion, for example, it would stay in that pending completion step. It's not going to advance forward or backwards as far as the step, but it'll send that message wherever we're directing it for who's in the send to. Back to the owner now. So if we're mimicking that account again, go back to my dashboard, my requests, or the request page, and then my requests. Service request complete, so we'll see that update. And again, you can drill just specifically into this one and kind of see that workflow along the way. This is where I could send that message back to you guys. So the checkbox there, that identifies our closing step. So you can see that is our complete step is a closing step. Void is also our other closing step. Complete is, we've processed this and now it's fully completed, compared to void. Maybe it was done in error and you're just trying to void it out entirely. Both of those, whether it's complete or void, since they are closing steps, if we go back here, they're always going to live here in this include closed. But if I clicked it, it's just going to show me that step complete versus void in the back end. All right, guys, what questions overall with that process do we have?
Question, just looking at the articles,
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that we had and maybe I didn't notice it, so I apologize, but there was a section there that said if it's like owner responsibility, that we can, post that response essentially and then close it, mark it as complete, or mark it as closed. Is that part of this setup here?
So you said if it is owner responsibility or it is not?
If they put in a ticket, if it is, like, we have to say, this is not for management to take care of. Okay, not association responsibility. Perfect.
Yeah, I think this is the step that you're referring to.
Yes.
And we can change that labeling, but this one, essentially, I would get this in review as the manager,
Right.
or if I step this to admin, whoever's actually reviewing it. But if it wasn't our responsibility, that's 75. That's going to notify the owner.
Got it.
And then there's a templated email here. Your request regarding, again, what they put right there. It's determined this is not fall under the responsibility of the association. And if we need to update that message, same thing.
That was great. Yeah.
This one, I believe if we step there to 75, it's going to roll. Yeah, so there's a 0 here, meaning that's an auto roll, and it will just go straight to complete and close that out.
Cool.
Awesome. Any of the steps that we need to update as far as the labeling, or do these make sense? Are these pretty clear as far as requests received, review, send to provider? One thing I may suggest is like the ones that we just added: on-site maintenance, Artemis maintenance, on-site, like maybe making those similar to this send to provider. So how this is send to service provider, it might be helpful where these are all send to on-site maintenance, send to Artemis, send to admin. if you guys don't think so, that's completely fine to leave as is, but just that way they're all, kind of aligned as far as the naming convention. But anything that jumps out that needs to be changed as far as the step names.
Hey, Matt, is there like a tool that maybe diagrams these out into a flow chart or something?
I mean,
Action
this not,
items?
let me double check. I don't think
I mean, so you
so.
can see the if then else kind of thing going on.
Oh, this might be, yeah. So this is kind of like a workflow. Some of this might be a little bit different. It looks like majority of it's the same. Notify owner, request receive, manager review, and then just the different options that you have here. So yeah, this might be helpful to review. I'll post this in the chat for you. Where'd my chat go? There we go. There's also, so this is more of like the workflow and then the steps down here. Processing a work order. This is also a good one just for the full processing of a work order, similar to what we just did, but really digging into each of those individual steps. Which I will post this one as well. And if we don't grab these like in the chat today, going to the Vantaca library, just typing in work order, both of those should pull up towards the top of the list. Cool. Other questions around the work order? Just to recap, so we changed that email. That was originally no notifications. Now it's going to give that courtesy notice to the owner. Provider assigned. Again, I would just recommend looking at all of the ones going external to provider and homeowner, making sure those email templates are up to your guys' standards. Service request complete, same thing, like whatever message you want to notify them once it's complete, getting that updated. Yeah, this one's pretty straightforward. There's typically not a ton of changes to this just out of the box. Some of the ones that we added for the different options down here, those are common. But generally, a lot of our clients are using this workflow out of the box. Cool. Well, that one went pretty quick. The next portion of this, we're going to talk assessments. Do we have everyone on that we need for the assessment conversation? Or is that a different group? I see Ray here now.
Ray's here. Don't think we have Dawson on, who's doing most of the assessments for Omega.
Okay. Yeah, and
I
I
don't think
gave
he was
the
invited on this, Corey. I think Ray was gonna do the initial review and
Oh,
then
okay.
train
Yeah.
Dawson. Is that what we talked about last?
Yeah, Ray said he was gonna train Dawson after he would get up to speed first and then
Yeah.
train Dawson in.
That is correct.
Well, my apologies. I will let you go.
awesome.
No problem, Corey.
Is this what I volunteered to double check to work with Ray on? I'm trying to remember what I've volunteered for something.
I think you're volunteered for everything, Michelle, so I'm gonna say
Yeah,
yes.
I'm
Okay.
pretty
Yeah.
sure it's everything.
I'll
too,
stay
Michelle.
on, but I'm gonna use the restroom and I'll be right back.
Yeah, if you guys want, we could take like a quick 5, and then we'll come back and jump into assessments. Does that sound
Good.
Cool. All right, guys, I'm gonna pause, just like my camera and everything, take 5, and then we'll be back 1:48-ish, 1:50.
Okay.
All right. All right, I see a good amount of people back. Ray, are you here? Just want to make sure don't get started without you.
He just doesn't want to show his face. His costume on the recording.
Well, we got another costume hiding back there.
Oh yeah, it's a good one too. Maybe he's not back.
Ray, is he still not sharing he's pretending like his camera's not working?
Mm.
You can just unmute too and say, "Oh, yeah."
I'm here. I'm here. I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm trying to. I have too many windows open. I was trying to get to it.
Oh, I thought you were going to show us your costume.
I can. I don't want to scare Matthew. You know,
You might. He looks like he
this guy's in charge of your finances. Let me run. So I just escaped this morning.
Oh goodness. Department of Corrections.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, I'm walking around, and I actually walked downstairs to give something at the front desk because somebody's picking up a check. Homeowners are looking at me like, "Oh my God."
I'm glad you didn't have your name tag on.
Oh my
No.
God. I'm dying. Oh my goodness.
That's a good one. Yeah, I'm sure the person you walk by that forgets it's Halloween is probably a little freaked out. But let's go ahead. Can you guys see my screen still?
Yes.
All right. So just before we get into assessment, just want to make sure we're clear on the chart of accounts and the GLs and everything. I know, Ray, that Sarah had reached out just asking for the type. I wanted to point out, so it looks like the ones that we got uploaded here, they just don't have the type. So basically what we need to get this imported is we have the code here, we have the description, and then we need the type, asset, liability, equity. If you look at the one that you uploaded for the test data, so I'm in folder B, test data, chart of accounts folder. Like this one has all of that. I don't know if you're able to just pull this report for all of them, but essentially this is what we need: code, description, and then this type here. Compared to the ones that we have in the other folder, they just don't have the type right now. So
Yeah, I was telling Sarah that the reason why we did that was unless if you guys can figure another plan, but like for instance, this is an example of one of our communities that's already in our system, that has been in our system, but there's a lot of since the Omega Association is just onboarded, there's a lot of codes that are not being used. So I didn't want to pull in junk. So what I did is I just pulled the data that's part of their budget, and what the expense lines is that are actually being used for each association. But I mean, I can pull that report. It's just going to have a lot of GL accounts that aren't being used.
gotcha. So what you're saying is, like, if we go to that other folder, chart of accounts.
Maybe we can just draw it from the test data and do lookups all over the place and pull it in. It's the same, right?
Yeah, pretty
The GL
much.
numbers are the same. I can do that.
Yeah, I mean, if it's easier for you guys to look at this one and just say these are the only codes we are using and want pulled in, and then just identifying the type here, like that would be fine. If it's easier though to just extract that with the type, either one should work. Just be mindful, like this one, we want to make sure that we're not leaving out any codes that truly do have balances. So when we go to convert that data, we don't need a translation as far as which GL does this balance tie to.
Gotcha.
But either way, whichever one's easier for you guys, if it's just keeping these ones and adding the type, that should be fine.
Well,
or if it's
the type would
extracting
be-
this.
Well, the types are pretty much set up under the GL groups that I created yesterday for Sarah. So, for instance, assets, it would be the bank. That would be 100 through 1099 per se.
Gotcha. Yeah. And that's just a separate setup piece. So we still need those GL groups and the types for those in there. But for the import of the actual codes, when we go to import it, we need to know what the code is, what the description is, and what the type is specific to that code. Whereas that GL group section, we also have to set that up, but it doesn't translate anything from GL groups to these accounts. We first need these codes in.
Christy, I don't know if you
with
want
those
to
types.
use this as your template, and then you
Yeah,
can
yeah,
go
yeah.
And you can go into all the other ones and create the VLOOKUP for off of that particular
Yeah,
template.
yeah, I can do that. That's easy. That's easy stuff.
Awesome.
Okay.
And you just need the type. You don't need the category, or yes?
No, I don't think we need the category. Let me double check what that is. Chart of accounts. What is the category like, I guess, for you guys first?
The category is how they're being lined up underneath on the reports, but the
Okay, got
category,
it.
but the type is what
Oh,
your GL
that's
group
like
would
the
be.
Yeah, so yeah, we
that's
don't
like
need
the
this.
font.
We just need this piece.
Okay. Yep, no problem.
Awesome. So back to Omega. Cool. So if you guys can get that to us like this week, that we can pretty much start setting up assessments or early next week or as soon as we get those GLs in. For the purpose of today's call, like I still want to go through how to set them up, at least in Presidential Valley. But we can't really set them up on the model or in a community yet until we get those GLs imported. So I'm going to keep it pretty high level, but I'm just going to kind of show you guys how to set up assessments in Presidential Valley since we do have some codes there. And then as soon as we get those GLs in, we can start doing this on the model and the association level specific to those different rates, frequencies, etc. So to begin, the main screen that we need when talking assessments and setting up assessments is under the association tab, and then this assessment screen kind of right in the middle. So if we click that, this is where all of the charges that live inside of Vantaca are going to be stored. So any charge that you would ever need to apply to an account, we want to make sure is set up here. When we're talking about this today, we're going to focus on like some of these, the regular assessment, late fees. We'll talk about the difference and what the type of charge is. But look at this as when we get your guys' AR prepaid and that conversion data balances, we're going to look at whatever's set up here. We're going to look at the files that you give us, and it's going to say, hey, this charge was applied to this account for this amount. And that charge also needs to live on this screen inside of Vantaca. And we want those to match exactly so we know exactly where that charge and that balance goes. So when we're setting these up, just be mindful of that and try and get it, as close to as it currently is as possible, making sure we're incorporating all of them. What can happen is basically like when we get that conversion data, if that charge doesn't exist in that association, we're going to go try and import that, not necessarily know where that balance should go. And then we're going to send you a file just asking for translations. The more that we can minimize those translations during the conversion data process, that's going to help us turn that data over in a timely manner so we can start producing financials on time. So, but really all that comes from right now when we're setting these up. If we're adding all the charges, we're labeling them correctly, then we should be able to minimize that translation piece as much as possible. So right now I'm looking just at Presidential Valley. When we get the GLs in, you really want to start on the model first. So if we go to the model association, this is where we can create all of the charges that you want on the model. So what that is say there's 20 charges here on this model assessment screen. I get a new association in 2 months. That new association is going to absorb those assessments that are on the model automatically. That way I don't have to come here, go to that new association and say, all right, let me create an assessment. Let me create a special. Let me create a late fee. Any of the ones that would automatically need to apply to that new account, you want to set up on the model. Once it's set up on the model, and I'm going to use Presidential Valley just because it has a couple, but pretending this is the model, once it's set up here, that's where we can copy that assessment to either all or individual associations. Obviously, the rules might be different across associations, so keep that in mind. But you can at least, create the bones on the model, copy that to the other associations.
So for the most part, the miscellaneous charges will probably be, we could probably use those for the model, but the assessments are all different for all the associations. So we wouldn't be able to use that for that point, right?
But they're still like they're all going to have an assessment. Like it maybe one's monthly, one's annual, one's quarterly, like that portion, which is called the rule in Vantaca, that might differ, but they should all have at least, the assessment charge itself. So that one is typically one you want on the model. Special assessment is probably one, late fee, miscellaneous, bank return. So whatever's in Presidential Valley, like this is a good kind of test environment, but yeah, look at it as I get a new association next week. I want all of these charges to automatically start on that community. From there, so say Presidential Valley is our new one. Now I can drill in and say, okay, this one is monthly versus annual versus semi. So like the rule
Gotcha.
is where the
Gotcha.
difference comes in per
Yeah.
association.
So this is kind of like what you're talking about with just like picking all of the most used charges that will go into the model. And then as you click on the individual communities, pulls from this list essentially. So you don't have to, you can click which ones apply to that community. So you don't have to upload them individually to every community. It basically will make a shortcut in the long run. Is that the way
It makes a
do this?
shortcut in the long run. Yes. It's
Yeah.
whatever 10, 20, 30 charges you want that new association to start with automatically, those are on the model. If it's a charge that is solely specific to Presidential Valley, that is not going to be on the model.
So let me just throw out an example. So not every community has late fees and interest. Some may only have one or the
Do the
other.
majority have them?
The majority have both.
So look at the model as majority, whatever the
that's what I was
majority
gonna say.
is.
So
Yeah,
you
and
want to
then-
look at the model as, like you said, assessments, late fees, interest, special assessments, fines.
And
Really
even if
anything that
say
you can
there's
think
one
of
or
that-
two that are
yeah.
on the model that don't apply to that new association, it's probably easier just to delete that off of the new
From
association
that community, yeah.
rather
okay.
than doing an entirely new assessment.
Because you'll still go into each community individually to set the amounts and frequency
Exactly.
and everything else. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And if we look here, let me see how it is broken out. So setup assessment. So if we look at week 4, so this is our Omega Rocket Lane project plan, but first step when talking assessments is to start them on the model. This is some really good information as far as setting up a new charge, assessment billing, and then an article, late fees, interest. This also pinpoints the different types, which we'll talk about in a second, but there's an action item type of charge, an assessment type of charge, a fee, which is only going to be your late fee or interest. See that right here as well, versus a manual ownership transfer charge. So those are just the different types of charges. The description is the name. And then this is another example, like assessment, special, late fee, a violation fee. Maybe those are some of the ones I want on my model, and then I can copy those from the model to all associations. And then once copied, that's where the rules per association will come into play. So if we come back here, we're just going to create one new assessment. And this is why we can't do this on the model right now or on an association, because you have to choose that GL account that this assessment is connected to. So that's why we're using Presidential Valley. But once those GLs are in, we'll have them available to choose. What do you guys call your assessment? Is it assessment, monthly dues?
Assessments.
Assessment. Perfect. So the description, again, that's going to be the name of the charge. So assessments, or did you say assessments? Not a huge deal, but we'll leave it with the S there. Type of charge, our assessment type of charge, that is our regular dues, our assessments, our monthly dues, or our special assessments. Again, if we come back over here and look at this really breaks out the different types. So an action item, and kind of what that, well, excuse me, we're on assessment first, but really that's going to be your assessment and your special compared to an action item. This is one that we have the ability to charge on a given step of an action item. Compared to fee, that should only be our late fees or interest. Manual, that's something like the miscellaneous charge. Maybe you go to that ledger and just manually do a new charge. And then ownership transfer charge as well. So the different types are going to allow for different rules. But just keeping in mind our assessments, those are assessment type, our late fee and interest, those are fee. And then everything else, majority of them are going to be action item or manual. And they just allow for different rules. So we'll do a couple different ones, but we'll say this one is our assessment. It is an assessment type of charge. I'm going to choose the GL that is specific to that. See if we have any test assessment. Fund, operating reserve. If you have additional funds set up on the association fund screen, that will also populate in the drop down. But I'm just going to choose operating and then billing here. So statements, coupons versus a breakout option. If you choose statements, this can only ever show up for billing on statements. It would not generate within a coupon. Compared to if we choose coupons, now I can generate statements or I can generate coupons, and it's going to pull up on either of those. Then the other option is a breakout here. So you can either, set up one charge and it's breakout one, another charge, breakout two. It's going to break those out and then total them. Or you can do like this coupons combined for those same two charges. But that's just telling the system what type of billing format we're using for this particular charge. So I'm just going to choose coupon. Subledger, everything right now is going to be connected to the default. But if we used or added subledgers at Vantaca, you can choose that from the drop down here. Coupon product code. This is specific to South Data. Do you guys use South Data just as a refresher? Yep. Okay. And then we send coupons through South Data.
Yes.
Perfect. So yeah, my billing format here would be coupon or one of the breakouts. And then this coupon product code, this is a coupon product code that you'll pull from South Data and enter into that particular charge in Vantaca.
That's the code that we have currently with South Data as our
correct. Yeah. Typically it's just like a dash and then the association code. So there's two parts. There's I think it's called like a PMID or like your actual account ID, and then there's product code. We don't need the full 4 digits dash the product code. We just need the product code here. The account ID is stored somewhere else, and we combine that with this coupon product code. That way, when we send it through the integration, the first part is you guys as Omega Artemis, and then the second part is specific to that association product.
Gotcha.
So yeah, generally it's just like the dash and then a couple digits, but we want to make sure and get those in as we're setting these up on the association level. So the model, for example, we're not going to add this coupon product code to the model because that's going to differ across the board, but specific to South Data, include an ACH. So if this is a charge that you would want to include in ACH, it's just a checkbox, yes or no. Keep credit balance. This is pretty uncommon. So majority of the charges you're setting up are not going to use this, but that is, say I am charged $100, I send you guys in 150. It's going to keep that credit balance of $50 specific to that charge and not allocate the balance elsewhere overnight. So majority of the time we want those to allocate, to those different charges for overpayment, but with this selected, it would not allocate to another charge. So again, not the most common setting, but if there are any unique charges where you would want to keep that credit balance connected to the charge, it is that checkbox there. Primary charge, this should be our assessments and our late fees. So those are the two primary. Again, selecting that checkbox to mark it as primary, unselecting, it is not primary. And then these last couple down here, you'll see exclude from collections balance threshold, and then collections lien threshold. This, again, not super common, but if this charge would not push me into the collections delinquency process, I can exclude this from collections by selecting these. So we will put our description as assessment, type of charge assessment. We chose our GL. We have our fund. We have our billing format, coupon product code, again, specific to South Data. I'm going to say include and is primary. This payment order, this is only applicable if I duplicate my tab and we go association settings, and then in this AR section at the top, payment distribution. So if I click edit on this, if we're using this custom order payment distribution, that is where on that other screen, this payment order comes into play. So I could say assessment is 1, special assessment 2, late fee 3, so on and so forth. You're literally just customizing that order, compared to we're paying fees first, we're paying assessments first, or we're paying that oldest charge first. But that's what that setting controls. If we're using custom order, it's just identifying the order that these are allocated. I'm gonna call this one dash test just to differentiate it from our other one. But we're gonna click update. And now we've created that charge in Presidential Valley. Again, we can do that on the model because the rule is what's going to differ per association. And once this is created on the model, we can select copy and copy that over to all associations. So you really only have to set it up once, copy it over, unless it truly is like an association specific charge for just that community. All right, so let's drill in and talk about the rules here for the assessment, and then we'll look at another different type of charge. When we're setting these up, now I'm looking at Presidential Valley. I have just created our assessment that is called assessment test. It's an assessment type of charge, and I selected the GL it's connected to. Now I need to tell the system when and what to charge in that community. So plus new rule is going to pop out our assessment rule window. When we're setting these up, you really just want to target your guys's go live date. I believe that is 1/1. Yeah, so 1/1/25. And that's telling the system starting January 1st of 25, we want this automation to kick off. So start date, go live, frequency. Now I'm telling the system, are we posting this monthly? Or is this an annual frequency? Is this semi-annual, or is this quarterly? If we look at just monthly and fixed, that's one of the more common setups. That's the easiest one to really set up to. So pretending this one is monthly, all we would do for that is plus new date, choose our day, which is the first in this example. And then I could say that charge should be $125. When I click update, the count and the total, that's going to come from my owners list. But essentially, that's just charging every single owner that same amount on the first every month, starting with my start date. It would go forever if I don't have that end date. But say it's just the calendar year of 25, I could put 12/31/25. Just being mindful that you want that new rule to be ready to go if we do have an end date. But does this one make sense? What we did here?
Yes.
Is that common for you guys? Where they're monthly fixed, or what's like the majority of your assessment?
The majority of our
rules?
assessments are either monthly or quarterly.
Okay, perfect. So this would be that monthly version. For a quarterly, and let me cancel that. So I didn't save that rule, but quarterly is just going to be a little bit different, but we go to plus new rule. Same idea with our start date. We want to jump up to our go live. And then the frequency, we're just going to tell the system rather than monthly, it's going to be this quarterly option down here. For quarterly, for monthly, we just need that one date. So it's basically choosing the day and the amount, and then every month that's going to apply automatically to those accounts. If it's quarterly, we would just need those 4 quarters as dates. So you would have one, and here you're choosing the month. Say it's January. Still, maybe it's the 1st, and then we'll say 1/25 again. If I do a new date, I just need to tell the system what those quarters are. It's kind of my point.
Yeah.
So here, we'll say March or April, new date. And I'm just selecting random ones now, but for that quarterly, you essentially just want those 4 quarters here to tell the system charging January on the 1st, April on the 1st, August on the 1st, November on the 1st, with those different amounts as well. So if it's all the same, you just have the 125, 125, 125. But now, rather than every month on the 1st, it's only going to target these that we've identified for the quarterly frequency. Same thing applies for semi-annual. You just need now the 2 dates. So if there's any that are semi, and then back to annual, it's just the 1 again, because it's an annual frequency. All of those are the fixed amounts. So whatever we're inputting, that's charging that same owner that same amount. We'll talk about the other options as far as percentages, charge tags, things like that. But does that make sense as far as the frequency is concerned?
Yes, but let's go back. I know that when you originally set up the assessment, you you listed it as a coupon and things of that nature. Semi-annually and annual assessments, we use statements, not coupons.
Okay,
So
got
does
it.
that change things there on the billing format?
Yeah, if they would never apply to a coupon, then yeah, you would just want to change that billing format for those annual versus quarterly.
Okay.
Good question though, for sure. Again, just keeping in mind, if I have statements selected, I can generate this only on statements. It would never, like if I went to generate coupons, there's an action item where we can do either or. This with the statement selection could never generate on a coupon compared to coupons. I can still generate this on a statement. I just also have the ability to generate this on a coupon. But yeah, for the examples you gave, it's fine to just set that as statement.
Okay.
And where that is, so this is all the rule, which again is telling us the frequency, the amount, what you are referring to. This is the actual assessment itself. So if we click edit on that, that's where that first window pops up. The description, the type, the GL, the billing, compared to this new rule. Now we're looking at the dates and the frequencies, things like that.
That makes sense.
Awesome. So let me go back, plus new rule. Again, start date, I recommend just using the go live date for all these. Even if they're different frequencies as far as quarterly, annual, we can still tell the system, hey, starting 1/1/25, this is when the rule is active. And then the month that we choose for a quarterly, for example, that's when it would actually apply, if it wasn't necessarily that first. But awesome. So the next piece, so that's all of our monthly, annual, quarterly, semi, and the fixed amount. I'm going to pull up some other options. Do you guys have ones where, for example, what we call charge tags? 1 bedroom is charged $100, 2 bedroom is charged $200. Is that anything that you guys do?
Yes.
Okay, so that one for Vantaca.
But those are the one, but yeah, we have associations that use the 1, 2. We also have associations that break it down by percentage.
Okay, perfect. So we'll talk about those. What we just talked about is the frequency that we're identifying and really a fixed amount. If it's not a fixed amount where every owner is charged that same amount, then this type is where we can say it is either a percentage, where we can round to the nearest penny or dollar. Specified value is now I'm identifying the account number and saying this account is charged $10, this account is charged 20, this one's 30. Like, say there's no rhyme or reason to the value. Specified value is one where we're just specifying that value per account. Percentage is now we're putting the total amount here, and then we do an import on the back end with this account number is charged this percent. So all the ones we're talking about here, the import portion we can't do for a little while, just because like we can't do that until owners are in, but we can start setting up the Excel spreadsheets with that data. So as soon as owners are in, we're ready to get that migrated and imported. So let's talk about a couple of those. Plus new rule, and I'm just going to choose 25 first. We'll say this one's monthly, and then we'll say percentage. So how this one is set up, if we go to the Vantaca library and type in percentage, just being mindful of which type of assessment you're setting up. The rule might be set up a little bit different per type. So as we just saw with the monthly fix, for example, that's one line where we identify the day and the amount. Compared to quarterly, that's 4 lines for the 4 different quarters. So just a little bit of difference in the setup of the actual rule. And then the same thing applies for if I'm doing fixed versus percentage versus specified versus what we call charge tag. So percentage, for example, we choose percentage type. We have the different round options, but all we're doing on this one is plus new date, entering the total amount that is being billed, and then clicking update. So you can see here it's on the first, and the total amount that association is billed is $3,600. That's how I would set up this rule if I'm doing a percentage. So back in Vantaca, new date on the first, we'll say it is $10,000. And that's all I would need to do for the rule piece for this percentage. Click update, and now my rule is set. The second part of that is the actual import, which again, this article is super helpful to kind of walk through that process. And once we get closer to the actual import piece, this is something we'll help you guys go through as well. But at the very bottom, there's this import template. And this is how we break out those percentages per owner. Come in here. And you can see it's 2 columns. So this is account, and then this is the percentage. If I take a look at this and sum it up, that's going to be 100. So my percent is 100. But basically, this is saying this account number is charged that 2% of that total amount that I set up on the rule. So when we go to import the Excel file, that's when that breakout comes into play. Right now, we've just set up the rule and said, hey, it's $10,000 per month. This is where that breakout of the percentage actually shows up in Vantaca.
Okay.
Again, we can't do this until owners are in, but we can start prepping these Excel files, especially if you guys have a lot that are percentage based. We can go ahead and start accumulating the account numbers. We can go ahead and start entering the percentage per account. We can set up the rule, and then as soon as owners are in, we can import that data on the front end. So that is going to be our percentage. Charge tag is another common one. So let's go through that real quick. Charge tag, importing homeowner charge tags. Again, it's going to be an Excel file. And the rule for this one is just a little bit different as well. So just being mindful of which type of assessment we're setting up. But you'll see here, it's quarterly, it's fixed. And then these tags are now what we use to identify the different rates. So in all the other ones we've talked about so far, if I go back here, we haven't entered anything into this column, and that's by design. The only time you're entering something into this first column of tag is if we're doing that charge tag type of import. So if I do a new one, I'm just going to leave that as 24 for right now. But I could do new date and say 1 bedroom is charged $100 compared to 2 bedroom is charged $200. So this would be my rule piece. I need to tell the system what that tag is and what that tag is charged. And if we go back to our Excel spreadsheet, it's a similar process where we download this. We are now telling the system essentially who has those designated tags. So a 3-column Excel file. First column is, again, account number. This is now 1 bedroom or 2 bedroom. And then association code is the lockbox code for that community. So we know where those tags are applied. But I could pull in all my account numbers and then my different tags, 1 versus 2, 4999 Presidential Valley. And then once imported, again, that's where that breakout, dependent on tag, comes from. So here's another example: single family, charged 100, townhome, 200. And then the tag, so whatever you're inputting on the tag, I just recommend copying and pasting this exactly. So control copy, taking that to the template, here, because we want those to match exactly as it's set up on the Excel spreadsheet and on the rule in Vantaca. Questions on charge tag?
No, sir.
Awesome.
All right. The good thing about it is we don't have too many like that. So
Yeah, it sounds like the majority are either that monthly or quarterly,
Correct.
which from a rule setup is awesome. Last one I want to go through, specified value. Again, this one is there's no rhyme or reason to the charges. They're kind of all over the place. Now we're choosing the type of specified value compared to fixed or percentage. Same thing with my new date. And I think that's all we need. Yeah, so this one we leave the amount field blank and click update. So really we're just identifying it's a specified value type and it's on the first. And then once we do that specified value import, that's where the count comes from as far as the amount. Compared to our percentage, we input the amount here, the percentage on the spreadsheet, and then that combined together. This one, we just need the date. Down here, same thing with that import template per different type of assessment. And it's now account number. This one is charge 40. This one is charge 50. This one is 60. This one is 70. This one's 80, so on and so forth. So if there's like 10 or more rates, that's when this one is recommended. Or if you're having issues with your percentage, this one's also a good one to utilize, at least on that first kind of conversion. But yeah, just account, what is their value? And then once imported, that's where that total amount comes into play. Point being, dependent on which one or which type of assessment we're using, the rule is just going to be slightly different. Good thing for you all, it sounds like majority of them are going to be fixed and just the different frequencies, which is great. And like I said, once we get those owners in, we'll circle back and help you guys get any imports for percentages, charge tags, etc.
Perfect.
Awesome.
For the most part, a lot of the setup is through the association button, correct?
Through the which one?
I said for the most part, not I'm just talking about in general, not only assessments, but for the most part, I see you guys use the association tab a lot to set up a lot of the stuff.
Initially, yeah. Like here, you're talking about this one?
Yeah. Because they're in there so that that's where you went in for the assessments, the bank accounts, the GL accounts, to set up the GL groups.
And yeah, you're exactly right. Initially, there's a lot of setup under this tab in particular. How we kind of break these out. Like this is my home button. The main piece here is like I can go back to my dashboard, or I can go to this financial summary, which gives you an overview of the financials for that account. So more for the accountants, but those are the main two in that drop down. And then everything else we try and correlate, with that category. So this is all things action items. This is all things homeowners. So my homeowner list, my homeowner ledgers, my homeowner payments, my homeowner contact info. Whereas this one is all things related to the association. So association assessments, association bank accounts, associations board committee, documents, calendar, etc. So yeah, pretty heavy on the database setup initially here, but we will start branching out to some of these other tabs as well. But yeah, you're exactly right. A lot of it is under this one at first.
Gotcha.
Once we get our GLs imported, this is also where those will live. So association GLs, the documents, like I mentioned, the calendar.
Yep.
Yeah, so definitely pretty heavy under there at first. All right. Any other assessment type questions?
No. So this is where we would set up our I know we were set up the late fees. I have a question in regards to that. Or is there a separate area for the collection portion of this?
The first portion of that for late fees collections is just adding this late fee charge on this screen. The other piece that it's connected to is under the association settings, and then within this collection section, which we're going to have a totally separate call for that, probably a couple to like help set this up. But for right now, we can just focus on the actual late fee in the rule.
Perfect.
And we'll go to this one next. So
Yeah.
and we'll just use this one as the example. I'm not going to recreate it, but if I click edit, it's the same thing. Now we're just saying this is my late fee. This type of charge is different because it's a fee that should only be our late fees or our interest. What's the GL, billing, all that good stuff is primary. So that's all very similar, just a different description. When we click in here, you'll notice if we do plus new rule, you see how that window is just totally different than the one that we were looking at? So dependent on the type of charge, assessment, fee, action item, etc., this edit window is going to differentiate dependent on those types.
Gotcha.
So this one is specific to our late fees. But say we charged fees on the 15th of the month. The first step is just to identify when those are charged. Again, this might vary across associations. That's why we can set the rules up on the association level. Active within, again, you can target that go live date as we're setting these up. These aren't going to be active as of 1/1. Generally, late fees are not turned on until after the first month of go live, just because we're converting your guys' data. The earlier we get that, the better that is for this as well. But we basically don't want to start charging fees until all of that's converted, audited, and you guys sign off on it. So if I go to my settings, even if we're setting that up as 1/1/25, we actually have to come in here, generate fees. It's going to be set to no on hold until we come in and turn it on. So if I flip that to yes, now it's starting to generate those. But until that is flipped, which we'll coordinate that with you guys, we'll work on it as far as the timing is concerned. But just want to point out that we actually have to turn these on to start generating.
Okay.
But here we're saying, when do we charge? If this is the 15th, just as an example, this should be 1 day less than when we're charging. So this 14 days old in this example would work. And then whatever that minimum balance that would accrue that late fee is entered here. So this is saying I've got a minimum balance of 25. It's at least 14 days old. My balance includes, these are the charges that a late fee could apply to. So my assessment and my special assessment, just as an example. But if you click in there, so if I go back out, I'm just clicking right in here in this box. It's going to pull up all the charges that we have set up. So that we only have 6 in Presidential Valley. But if it's set up in the back end, you can pull it in here. Late fee, for example, is probably not in this balance includes, because this is essentially saying like I could get a late fee on a late
Top
fee.
of the late fee.
Yeah. But what is that minimum balance? 1 day less than the day I'm charging. And then what is the actual charge amount here? So that can be a fixed dollar amount or a percentage. And it's either a percentage of that charge amount, my current balance, or the current month charge balance. So those, as far as like if you guys use percentages or the fixed amount, I'd say it's helpful to just look at this, which is also in this task here, I believe. And Ray, I'm just going to add you to this so you have it handy. But this last one here, late fee interest rules, if you click that article, it'll pop up over to Vantaca Library. And this is essentially what we're talking about right here. This digs into the rule, talks about monthly versus one time, your minimum balance, your fixed amount, number of charges, all that good stuff. What the balance includes is, but down here, as far as the percentage, this will break out like, should I use current balance versus charge amount? And if so, which percentage amount I'm truly entering here.
Gotcha.
Questions on that, or Ray, did you have some specific questions too?
No. It sounds like we're gonna dive into the collections portion a little further down the line, so that's perfectly fine. No, that was just my questions, but I'm assuming that since we're setting these rules up, this stuff is gonna run automatically behind the scenes once it's all set up, right?
100%. Late fees, collections, and Vantaca, essentially they're two separate processes that work very closely hand in hand, but highly automated through the notice portion until I get to, in Vantaca, what is called like an account review step. And then from there, I'm reviewing the account. We've sent all the notices, the durations have, timed out. And now it's, do I send this to the attorney? Do I set them up with a payment plan? Is it foreclosure? Like you're basically letting the system do all the notices for us based off of thresholds, balances, things like that. Once it gets to review, the automation subsides a little bit, but it's, hey, now what do we do next with this account? But whatever we're setting up here, like I mentioned, is going to correlate to this section down here. So, but yeah, we'll dig into that together. I'll set up a separate call with you, similar to what we did for work order. We'll do one for collections, but probably like have a couple, just because that one can get pretty complex as far as the setup piece with all that automation.
Gotcha.
But for right now, just focusing on the late fee, getting those rules in and saying, hey, we charge on this day, this amount based off this balance. And for say like a lot of your associations, if we go back to this rule, say there's a handful of them that have this 15th, charge date. We technically can copy this with the rule too. So if that rule applies to multiple, you can create it on the one Presidential Valley that it starts out on. But I could then come in here and say, okay, I want to copy this one with the rule to all of mine that are the 15th
Oh, wow.
date. So
You have a lot of time.
yeah, so just keep that in mind so you don't go one by one and just do the same rule. If that rule does apply across the board, you can technically copy that as well. If I don't select this, all that's copying is essentially the charge itself in this edit screen here.
Gotcha.
Awesome. Let's talk action item. This is a fun one here. Bank return is a great example of an action item type of charge. You'll see the type of charge is different. If I drill into it, and then we do plus new rule, again, it's going to be a different set of rules dependent on that type here. So this looks different than my assessment, than my late fee, because it's an action item type of charge. But on this one, we can essentially tell the system, hey, on this action type, in this example, bank return, and then on this step, automatically charge this amount one time. And so you're basically putting that amount. You have a frequency here if it's one time, daily, weekly, monthly. But with this rule set up, you have the ability to let the system charge that amount on that step for us. Another example is late fee, or excuse me, violation fees or fines. Maybe you want to automate that process. But if I go to an account real quick, and something like the bank return, like this wouldn't be kicked off this way, but just to show you that's I might not be able to. Let me do a different one.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Update. So I'm going to just create one real quick for violations. So here I'm saying on violations, the action type, and then on maybe it's one of my fine steps, or maybe it's on the actual notices if you were to charge. I'm just going to do the first one for right now, but say it's $25 one time, and this is a violation fine. With this rule here set up in the assessment screen, now if I'm on an owner account, and let me select an owner, Rutherford, and it's this action type, violations. And on that step, you see how I get this charge amount box automatically? So with that rule set up on the assessment screen, this is present. If I don't need to charge this, I can change it to 0. It's not going to charge anything. If I need to increase that, I can put it to 50. I just need that rule set up on the assessment screen for that action type and that action step in order to get this charge amount box. So bank return, again, is just a really good example of that. And you'll see there's multiple rules here. So it's saying if we look at this rule on the step NSF, charge 25 one time. Same action type, but it's a different step compared to the one underneath that. Bank return action type, but on my stop payment, same thing, charge 25. Another step here, invalid account, charge amount 25 one time. So this one in particular would most likely have these different steps. Just that way you have the ability to charge on whichever step you're choosing to charge on. And that can be done for any action type. So bank return violation, those are some of the common action item type of charges. But if there's other action types that we create and we want to automatically apply those charges, same thing holds true for really all action types. Just has to be that action item type of charge. Manual, this is really just a miscellaneous charge here. You'll see there's no rule connected to this. In that one, if I duplicate and we just go to a homeowner ledger, that's where I'm just manually applying that charge. So new charge, I choose miscellaneous, and I say it's $50 update. You'll see here in my dropdown too, and right now I'm in Presidential Valley, but whatever is on my association assessment screen, those are the only charges that I have available to charge on that account. So that's what I was stressing at the beginning of, hey, you want to make sure you have all of the charges that you guys currently use or that you would need to charge once we're set up in Vantaca. But yeah, miscellaneous is just going to be I'm manually, or excuse me, not miscellaneous. It could be multiple, but manual, I'm just manually charging that account. Another just pointer, I guess, if you're unsure if it should be like manual versus action item, I always recommend just choosing action item, because essentially if it's an action item, I have the ability to charge it on an action item that I choose and specify. I also have the ability to choose that or charge that manually. Whereas manual, you can only charge manually. It's not ever going to be available in an action item. So, for example, if I do new charge, even though bank return is an action item one, I can still choose that here and choose my amount. Questions with some of those other types? Fee, manual, action item. Does that make sense how those rules differ depending on which type we're looking at?
Yes.
Sweet. So if we go back to this assessment task, went through action item, assessment, fee, manual, ownership transfer, I don't think we touched on. But this is, again, a way to automate through an ownership transfer type of charge. I'm just going to say owner transfer.
Brittany, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
You're talking about ownership transfers on the system, how we can be able to set that up and automate it.
Okay.
So if I drill into this one, again, different type of charge allows for different rules. But here, if on every ownership transfer, we have a charge amount, we can input that. If it's just on the first transfer only, same thing, what is that charge amount? And check this box to charge old owner versus new. Once we're going through an ownership transfer process, like after we run the ownership transfer action item, it's going to kick off what is called a new owner setup action item automatically. We'll go through that and just how that process works. And after that piece, like you can still go in and make charge adjustments, add payments, things like that manually. But this is just a way to essentially automate that with these different rules. Awesome. Questions on assessments or setting these up or the different types or just anything in general that you guys have or are wondering about assessments?
So my only question is that this again, and sorry for asking again, but this is we can adjust community specific, right, on the ownership transfer change because we have different clients that we deal with. And I just wanted to make sure that we can make those adjustments.
Yeah, like everything I did here or we're looking at right now, this is specific to Presidential Valley. So like if I'm doing an
Okay.
ownership transfer charge and I say this one is just $100 on every transfer and charge the old, like this is only applicable to Presidential Valley.
Okay.
If there's multiple that have that same setup, I can still copy and say copy that rule to those where that would apply. Or if it's totally different, now I can go to 1541. And again, you can copy just the assessment itself without the rule and then update the rule on 1451 versus 42 versus 43. So like the association assessment screen, they're essentially association specific. But there's some that, might apply to multiple communities, which is where our model comes in.
Got it.
But
Okay.
short answer to your question, yes, you can change that amount per association.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Let me come back here. Yeah, so if we look at, again, just going back to Rocket Lane, so a lot of what we talked about, we use Presidential Valley, but first step, setting up those assessments on the model. Ton of detail in here as far as the different types, some Vantaca library resources, and then some examples. And then if we jump over to week 5, after that setup on the model, we really want to start focusing on our main assessments, our late fees on the actual association level. So Ray, I'm going to add this one to you just so you have it handy and as a reference. If we jump even further ahead, just want to point out this one here. So what we were looking at, that's week 4, week 5, week 10. So now we're getting closer to go live here. But this import task, this is all the ones that I was talking about at the beginning. It's specified value versus percentage versus charge tag. If we're utilizing any of those types, that's where this task comes into play, but can't be imported until owners are in. But we can still set up the assessment, the rule, and get everything prepped for those imports. Ray, I'm going to add you to that one as well. Again, you don't have to jump up to this one, just so once we circle back to it, or if you want to check it out as a reference, you have it handy.
Sounds good.
Awesome, guys. If we come into Vantaca Library and you just type in assessments too, so assess, how to set up assessment rules, how to set up a new charge, some best practices, tons of material in here. This new charge one, for example, that's just the charge itself. Going to assessment, clicking new assessment in that first edit window, but can be helpful for just additional detail as far as those different data fields. That's all I got for you guys. So we definitely, I'm glad we, took advantage of that extra time. And like I said, once we get those GLs in, we can start doing that on the actual model and association level. So what we can circle back to this in the next couple of weeks as we get those in, just in case you guys have questions. But how do we feel overall assessment setup wise?
Sounds good. It's not it's just a matter of finding where we need to plug the information in, but the setup is fairly self-explanatory.
Awesome. Yeah. And there might be, like, once you start getting into it, there might be some kind of weird one-offs or unique scenarios per community that we need to dig into further. So just let us know if it doesn't fall, neatly into one of those groups or categories that we talked about. And we can kind of guide you to, how we need to set those up.
Sounds good. Nice.
All right. Anything else you guys have for me?
No, sir.
Thanks, Matthew.
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead, Ray.
I appreciate your time.
For sure.
I know that Christy will get those categories set up when we get and we can upload that into the SharePoint.
Awesome. Yeah, if
Is
you
that
guys
the
have
only,
any other questions on that, just let us know.
is that the only thing missing, I believe?
I think so. Like, I think we have the bank accounts and some of the other imports, but like looking at bank accounts, for example, we can't enter those in or import them until we have those GLs.
Gotcha.
So yeah, if we can get those in the next couple of days, we'll be able to start the assessment piece next week, but we'll also be able to do some of these other imports that we already have data for.
Sounds great. Appreciate
All
you, Matthew.
right. Yeah. Thank you guys. Reach out if y'all need anything at all, and we will talk soon.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Take care.